Could you sum up the past year of climate politics in just one sentence?
Wow. The last year of climate politics has been, unfortunately, relatively disastrous. We've seen the near collapse of the international negotiations, and we've also failed to see a law get through the US on climate. So really, if there was one word to sum the whole thing up, it would be relatively disastrous.
Okay, moving on to the coalition, I don't know if that's as disastrous. There's a widespread sense of disappointment. What would you say their biggest mistake has been environmentally?
I think that the biggest mistake in environmental politics, and this doesn't just go for the coalition, it goes for Labour before them, is not to see the economic crisis that we're in as an opportunity. It was an opportunity to rebuild the economy that we have, to base it around the idea of green jobs, green investment, and essentially a green recovery out of this crisis. But instead what we've done, and continue to do under the coalition government, is actually invest in the old economy and the old ways of doing things, and so we're wasting billions and billions whilst propping up the system that's leading to this climate disaster that we're heading towards.
Are there any redeeming features at all about the coalition?
As always, it's not black and white. You know, not everything the coalition's doing bad. They are, for example, setting up a green investment bank which could provide, if implemented correctly, the first planks of genuinely green investment into a new economy. They are also committed to 10-10, which is brilliant. They've committed the central government estate to cutting 10% of its carbon from May to May, so when they actually got into power. And there's one or two other policies as well. For example, they're investing in the infrastructure needed for offshore wind, so the dredging of the sea channels in the ports. So not everything they're doing is wrong, but I think what we need to see now is a much more holistic integration of climate policy through the whole of government department's business, so that climate change doesn't just reside within the Department for Energy of Climate Change, but it's mainstreamed. It's in the way that we think about pensions and our pension investment funds. It's in the ways that we think about job creation, and basically the way that we do business, because essentially we've got to wholesale reform the energy infrastructure of this country and the way we think about investments.
Moving on to COP16, I've been to quite a few talks, and a lot of people are saying that there's no point really expecting too much and that we should be looking at other avenues in order to achieve change. Do you think our energy is better spent focusing on those other channels?
The problem with the international negotiations is, in essence, when you get there, the deal is pretty much already done. The mandate that those negotiators have when they arrive in Cancun, or before that in Copenhagen or in Poznan, they're already set. Those people that are doing the negotiating know the final line that they can reach, in essence. And so what you need to do is you need to change the context within which those negotiations happen, and that means changing the national context. So we've got to reframe climate change so that people think that tackling climate change is, as I say, about job creation, about a better way of moving forward and a better way of development for the developing world as well.
Can we do that in 2 weeks?
Not in 2 weeks, which is why 1010 has chosen not to be present at the climate negotiations in Cancun. We think our energy, for the moment, just as our organisation, is better spent here, putting pressure on the government and changing the context of those negotiations. But also, we're not just doing that in this country, we're doing that in now 46 different countries around the world. In essence, it's really important that lots of groups do go to Cancun, and that there are organisations there holding governments to account and bearing witness. But the main piece of work I think that needs to be done now is the changing of the context within which these negotiations happen, so that they can't fail again in the future.
I want to read you a comment from someone online under a Guardian article that was dealing with 1010. They said, "I'm afraid it's going to come as a shock to 1010, but the world really does not revolve around the current moans of North London's chattering classes." So I want to talk about skepticism, which clearly hasn't gone anywhere in the past year. Who should be dealing with and responding to skepticism?
What we've seen over the last year in the climate change movement is a very strong, a very concerted and organised skeptic movement that exists to plant doubts. Now they have one or two or three or four key arguments that they peddle over and over again, that this is a rich, white, elite thing to put up taxes on the poor, average person. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the climate movement is a diverse movement based across the whole of the world that's fighting for justice and is fighting to make sure that the sorts of policies get through that actually enable us to have a safe and habitable world. Now, in terms of how to respond to that comment that you just gave there, well, 1010 is not a movement of North Londonistas. You know, we're based in 46 countries, including Bangladesh, and our people are based equally across the whole of the UK. And they're actually getting involved in this because they're saving money, they're having healthier lives, and they're happier as a result of it.